Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen, and happy Halloween. In today's video, we are going to take a look at some of the spooky things in the sky. We're here in the countryside already. I'll get rid of those meteor showers. If you'd like to hear a little bit about the Leonids, you can check out the last video, or there will be more videos about those meteor showers in the future. So taking a look at the sky here, we're going to move through the morning time. We are in the countryside, so we can see the glow of the Milky Way. I mentioned in the most recent Irish language video that the night sky on Halloween is going to look particularly nice, especially if you're in the countryside at the right time of the night. We've got a wonderful view like this with Mars, Jupiter, potentially Uranus, Saturn, Neptune's out there if you've got a telescope. It's a great collection of objects. Moving through to about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning is going to bring Orion up to its highest point in the sky, still in complete darkness. And one of my favorite spooky objects in the sky is just here in Orion. So zooming in here, we have the Witch Head Nebula. So taking a look just here, it almost looks like the profile of a witch. So that's the Witch's Head Nebula. It does kind of look like the profile of a witch. It is a faint nebula, and it's so close to the more famous Orion Nebula here. It's just off the side of Rigel. You do need a pretty good telescope and a reasonably dark sky to see it, but just the fact that it is the Witch's Head, I think that makes it a good enough target for Halloween. There we go, the Witch Head Nebula. There's a few other objects out there as well. Looks like there's a couple of galaxies, which are also nice, and you would need a much more powerful telescope to see those than you would to see this particular nebula. Nebulae are, in particular, some of the most varied looking objects in the sky. Nebulae can look like all sorts of things, especially if you use an imagination. Stars in general look like bright objects. Galaxies are often lenticular or elliptical or spiral, disc-like or irregular. Even irregular galaxies normally just look like blobs. Whereas nebulae, because of the different contrasting colors and different levels of brightness and different parts of the nebulae, you can get all sorts of crazy names, some of which could be considered accurate. So here we go, the Skull Nebula. You can see it's also called the Soap Bubble Nebula and the Voodoo Mask Nebula. Now, a skull, a mask of a human figure, they're not going to look too different. It doesn't look too much like a skull here, but I believe we need to rotate it a little bit. There, oh, it's getting too bright. We will get rid of the atmosphere to fix that problem. We'll get rid of the ground too. And here we go. Oh, it flipped around again. So you must need to look at this from a completely different part of the Earth to get it to look right. But if you tilt your head just a little bit, the eyes are here. There's a nose and a mouth. That is the Skull Nebula, or the Soap Bubble Nebula. I can see why someone would call this a soap bubble. It does take a little bit of imagination to see it as a mask, but that is often the case for, well, any nebula in space. This is a cluster, so a cluster of stars. If we zoom back out a little bit, well, I am not seeing that as a screaming skull or a ghost, but it is a wonderful open cluster. An open cluster, that's interesting. This many stars packed into a small space would often be a globular cluster, but this must be something more like the Pleiades, and indeed, there are a lot of young blue stars in here, as it would appear, whereas globular clusters are more often older stars. So, I did not know that I'd be looking at something so interesting up there in the glow of the Milky Way. Caroline's Rose Cluster is its most popular name, and we can see there that it doesn't have a Messier number or anything like that. It is in the New General Catalogue up there, up in the 7,000s, but all of those indicate that this particular cluster of stars is probably a little tricky to see. We're going to take a look at the Skull and Crossbones Nebula as well, while we're looking at things that are called skull. And this nebula is down here. Looks like it's observable in the northern hemisphere, not too far away from Sirius. And I'm not seeing it in this case. Very nice looking nebula. We can see it's got this reddish pinkish color in these dark regions. It's a H2 region. So I would assume that this is a region of space that's capable of forming stars, getting heated up by the stars that are forming inside it. but it doesn't look like a skull and crossbones. It certainly has a spooky name. And, well, zooming out a little bit, it maybe looks like a face with its mouth open if you use your imagination, but a lot of imagination would be necessary and is generally true for these nebulae in space. They are really just clouds. And of course, you may have played the game of imagining things in clouds yourself when you were younger, but it does take imagination. Clouds are really just formless shapes of water vapor, and these nebulae in space. Oh, there we go. We can see some of the ghosts there with their hands raised. It's upside down from how you're supposed to look at it, but it still requires a fair bit of imagination to see these things as ghosts and not just as formless billowing shapes of gas. This is a reflection nebula, so it's catching that light up. Yeah, it's catching the red light from... the reddish color usually means an emission nebula, so maybe this has been imaged in false color or with a different mapping. If you are looking at an object that is emitting a lot of red, emitting a lot of infrared, then it can sometimes be given colors like this. But it is a very nice looking nebula, and it does look like it has a bunch of ghosts in it. There is a ghost cluster as well, and clusters of stars, they're clusters of stars. So yeah, that's the same cluster again, the ghost cluster. So it is just a group of stars all packed in together. It's really only if you were looking at these through a telescope too weak to resolve the individual dots of the stars that it would look like a kind of fuzzy, blurry shape. That could give indication of a ghost. Whereas with the telescopes that we have today, we have the capacity to resolve the individual stars and see it as it really is. So if we take a look at this with a weaker telescope, all of these options keep making it better. Let's go down to something a little weaker if we can. That's the weakest it is going to show me. We'll get rid of those Barlow lenses, and even then, it still looks like a bunch of stars. Perhaps with the atmosphere on, still looks like a bunch of stars. So the telescope used when this was called the Ghost Cluster, and probably the Screaming Skull Cluster as well, must have been pretty old-fashioned. And you can see it's called Herschel's Spiral Cluster. This indicates that it was probably... Oh, and Caroline's Rose Cluster could be... That Caroline could be Caroline Herschel. And Herschel... Both the male and female Herschel, Caroline Herschel and the other Herschel, they were active in the very early days of astronomy, 1800s. I'd have to double check exactly, but they would have been working with far weaker telescopes. Now, those are some things in the sky that have these spooky names, that have those, if you use your imagination, they can have a spooky appearance, but they are just clouds of gas floating through space. Despite the name, they're not really that scary in and of themselves. Betelgeuse, the actual star isn't too scary, as long as it really is so far away that it won't cause us any damage when it goes supernova. And it does seem like Betelgeuse is far enough away that it won't cause any damage to the Earth when it goes supernova. We're almost certainly safe. But if you do want to scare people a little bit, you can say that there is a chance that Betelgeuse could damage us when it goes supernova. And according to some research and some models, there is a possibility from what I've been able to find. But it also doesn't seem particularly likely. We are probably fine. Of course, black holes are quite spooky. They can tear us apart, and we don't really understand them. The unknown can be one of the scariest things. A lot of people are afraid of the dark because they don't know what's in the dark, rather than being afraid of the darkness itself. If we take a look in towards the middle of the Milky Way, somewhere in here is Sagittarius A star. I wonder if it's listed. Sagittarius A star is usually written with an asterisk. Star Alpha Centauri may not be the right one. And Stellarium doesn't seem to be allowing me to go find it, but that's okay. Sagittarius A star is the black hole in the... Yeah, there's Sagittarius A east, A west. Nope, that's definitely not a black hole. That is a star-forming region, a H2 region. But in here somewhere, of course, we don't really get to see it, but the black hole in the center of our Milky Way is in there in the center. A huge black hole that luckily we're very safe from. But discussing the kind of things, the kind of damage that a black hole could do can certainly be a little bit spooky. Looking up towards the Summer Triangle, which is still visible at this time of year, we've got what I believe to be one of the most famous black holes, which is Cygnus X1. It might be down as Cygni or X1 Cygni, but there we go. Oh, that's X1 Centauri. That's not the one I was looking for. Up in the constellation of Cygnus, up in this direction, is the very first black hole in this direction in the constellation of the Swan. It is a stellar mass black hole. It's not a supermassive black hole. Although black holes are formed from stars significantly larger than our sun, the smaller black holes are still the mass of stars. And they can be, 10, 20 times more massive than our sun, but not 20,000 times more massive than our sun, which is the kind of size you can get for the supermassive black holes in the center of galaxies. There are black holes just floating around in space. There's a black hole way out there. Its radio sources can be picked up from Earth. So there are black holes just around the sky. Sometimes a black hole will pass right over your head, thankfully from very, very far away. But it can be a little bit of a spooky concept if it's put correctly. So there are a few of the interesting things that you can take a look at on Halloween or really any time of the year. It's always nice to talk about some spooky things on Halloween, so hopefully you do get a chance to see them or talk about. But if not, a lot of those objects are going to be visible at any time of the year. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it, and if you'd like to see more from me, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also read some of this information on my website, queebeanscontent.ie, and hopefully you have a happy Halloween, and I'll see you back here next time.